But state legislators are attempting to make various changes to the original law that we voted on. So looking forward to hearing from some of the experts today. We are going to record it. So if you don't feel like having your camera on, no pressure. But this will be recorded and posted on our YouTube later so people can continue to reference it or share it with others to get that information out there. But before we get started with the lawyers, I just want to say hi and thank you for being here today. My name is Erin Babcock, and I'm the Education Director for Entourage Connect. Entourage Connect is a collaborative community for canna-curious and creative individuals, amateurs, professionals, like many of yourselves in the industry, as well as brands and businesses to connect, create, educate, and then elevate our impact as a whole in the cannabis industry, wellness, and beyond. We know the stigma and misinformation that exists out there with this plant, so we focus heavily on sharing education, like this conversation, through media and event opportunities to learn more and help people connect with each other. We're going to be growing our network now, and we'll continue to adapt and expand with the industry as we figure out what is going on in Ohio, especially. So with us today, we have Kelly Babcock. She is an employment lawyer, hemp cultivator, and she's the executive director here at Entourage Connect. And with us as a guest, we have Greg May. Greg is a seasoned cannabis law attorney, and he has quite a bit of experience in the Ohio cannabis landscape. He also in the past has been an owner and operator of a chain of franchise restaurants, the co-founder of a craft beer distribution ship, and he's a consultant to many businesses in the cannabis industry. He's been involved a lot in what's been going on the last 2 weeks, in the trenches, staying up to date. So we're excited to have him here to be able to break down what's been going on and what is yet to come. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to you guys. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us, and I hope you get some good value out of this conversation.
Thanks, Erin. Thank you, Erin. For those who are on the webinar live, if you could mute for a few minutes. If you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and we'll have a question and answer time at the end if there's enough time. And then for those who are watching this either online or later on, we will put the website in the chat where you can join our organization and keep up to date. And if you want to join us for the next two videos that we have in this series, and then of course we're going to have a lot of more education content coming out after the dust settles here in Ohio and we understand what the true rules are going to be. So as Erin mentioned, we're coming here today talking about seeing green in Ohio, and issue 2 was a ballot issue that was on the Ohio ballot in November. It passed by 57%, as Erin said, a popular vote to have an adult use program for marijuana in Ohio. The specific language that was passed on November 7th by the people was actually passed as a statute in this case, and therefore once it was enacted, or once it became a statute, then the legislature had the ability to go in and make changes or even repeal it. And so that's where we are today. Basically, we're partway through the process of the Ohio House and the Ohio Senate taking their shots at the legislation as it was written by on the ballot. And so there's been really no change as of this point, but there were some attempts made last week, and there's going to be some more hearings this week. And so I'm going to let our guest, Greg May, who has spent many hours in the last few weeks, probably since November 7th, working with clients and legislators, really on nailing down what the final rules are going to look like for adult use in Ohio. So, Greg, welcome. Thank you for taking time out of your busy week. I know we've got a lot going on, and I appreciate you being here. So, just a quick question: if you want to kind of fill in any gaps that I've left out here on the legislation, and then kind of tell us what went on last week at the Ohio State House regarding issue 2.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Kelly, and thank you, Aaron, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been talking about this a lot recently, so lots to share. I like to break it down into 3 parts, really, and that would be, what happened between November 7th and December 7th. That should be pretty easy to talk about because the answer is not much until about a week or 2 ago. So first of all, as you mentioned, Kelly, that we passed a citizen-initiated statute on November 7th that, by its language, would go into effect on December 7th, and I think we all knew that our governor and particularly the Senate weren't very pleased with it. They came out and made some public statements to that effect and warned us all that they were, in their words, going to sort of mess with the outer edges of the bill. But as we saw, what they did was they essentially gutted it and repealed it in its entirety, and then tried to take our existing medical law, Chapter 3796, and essentially just add some bricks to it to set up our adult use program. I kind of compare it to, if you're looking for a house and you want to start, it's you have a choice. You can buy an old house and remodel it, or you can buy a lot and build a brand new house on it. And I think that's what the voters were expecting, was that they were getting a brand new house. And then suddenly, they're faced with a full out repeal of 3780, which is the statute that was enacted by issue 2, and then just kind of start, remodeling, I guess. And their first attempt at that, obviously when they had their public hearings, they got a lot of pushback, not just from the industry, but they started to realize that maybe that wasn't, that they had kind of overstepped a little bit. And then they revised that Senate bill and did add some things in there that I think the voters will embrace, particularly the expungement language, and then the early rollout. And they did pass that, and they sent it over to the House late on December 6th in the afternoon. And the House responded by adjourning for the day. And so if anybody likes t-shirts, I think I've got a good idea for one. I think I'm going to have one that just says "The House adjourned," and maybe put a little leaf on that or something, because I think that right there is what the House did to basically respond to the Senate. And then at midnight, 3780 went into effect. So now, that is the law. It's been the law since today's the 11th. So today's, I guess, day 5. And that's basically what happened until December 7th.
Yeah. So that was pretty much in the span of about 3 days. The Senate came out with a bill. They had a hearing. They amended their bill. They had another hearing, right? Passed their bill, passed their version, Senate and then the House came up with their own version, had a hearing. and
yeah, so I mean, the problem is whenever one of the chambers tries to pass a bill, they have to send it over to the other chamber for approval, and they didn't have enough time to do that here. So they took a bill, HB 86, which had already been sent over by the House. It had to do basically with alcohol. It was essentially setting up a new class of distillery license, or modifying the laws with regard to distillery production. And they decided that's close enough to marijuana, we can put it in into this bill without violating the single subject rule. And and then they just started to have at it, right? And they just immediately repealed 3780 and then started doing all this remodel work. And that was just an effort to get something over to the House quickly. Uh, Basically what the House is doing here now. So we're now into phase two, right?
Yeah, so now
What
we're Monday,
we
we're
have,
starting
yeah,
in the
we're
House. Yeah.
now we're in phase two, I guess, which is I'll call this phase. I don't know how long this phase is going to last, to be honest with you, but it won't last too long, I think. But now the House is taking a bill that they just proposed, it just introduced last week. Representative Calendar introduced House Bill 354. It essentially is built upon the language of 3780. It starts there, which is good. And it essentially, as I said, mimics the language of 3780. If you pull up, if you go to the Ohio State,
And just for people
state's
listening,
what,
when we say 3780, that is the Ohio Revised Code chapter section that was given to the issue 2 language as passed by the people, right? So when we talk about 3780, we're talking about an Ohio Revised Code section. Right?
correct. I'm going to post it here in the chat. People want to pull it up. Once I find the chat here. Give me a minute, but I will. It's essentially on the state's website. Here we go. And now you can see, what, this is enacted, right? I'll also post,
So while he's doing that, that chapter that he just passed at they just posted 3780 of the Ohio Revised Code is actually law today. It's in effect. It is that's the legal framework that we're working from in Ohio today. All of the House hearings that we're going to talk about and the changes would then have to be added to or repeal or modify
yeah,
what's currently in 3780 right now.
that's correct. So I posted a link to 3780. That is essentially the code as written in issue 2. I also posted a link to, I might have overshot the link by one, but I posted a link to the House Bill 135. If you click on one of the download links that you see on the page I just posted, you'll get a PDF of House Bill 354. The important language that you want to see there starts on page 14. And as you'll see, it just starts out with 3780.01. And then what you'll be able to do is see that here, instead of going back and having to compare what they were the Senate was putting in 3796 and trying to compare it to 3780, which was just a really unpleasant exercise, take my word for it. Now we're starting with the actual language from 3780, and you can now track what types of changes that the House was going to make in 354 before they went into session and started considering more changes. But as you'll see, it's very minor stuff. It's some correction of language and things like that. This to me quickly became the vehicle that we're going to be dealing with in my mind, and it looks like that's the case. The committee, as you'll see on the link I posted, has scheduled hearings for tomorrow and Wednesday in the Finance Committee for House Bill 354. They've already had one hearing which occurred on Thursday. You can go back and watch that. There weren't too many people that really figured out, I guess, at the time, how important this bill was going to be or what it was doing. So there were only about 9 or 10 people that testified at that hearing. There were some others that submitted written testimony, and you can actually either watch the testimony of each person, or you can even download the written testimony through that somewhere in there, what I sent. And I predict there's going to be a lot more people testifying tomorrow and Wednesday. There's also, if you're interested in testifying or someone that is, there is, I'll try to find it and post it here, or at least while we're talking, I will. There is a procedure, you have to go through to request that ability to testify, and you have to have that in by a certain time, and I think it's Jay Edwards, Representative Jay Edwards is the committee chairman, so it has to go through his office. That's been posted on LinkedIn and Facebook, I know, so we can get to that. But yeah, that's about to happen. Now, the governor, as we know, also came out last week and made a plea that we get to these changes quickly, and also endorsed the concept of an early rollout. That was
Yeah,
obviously, yeah,
ask you
yeah.
about that because that seemed to be almost a 180 that they did it overnight last week, from trying to stall the issuing of new dispensary licenses, trying to stall the program, to basically coming out with language that said it's going to go into effect in 90 days without rules and just operate under the rules of the medical program. Do you have any insight as to I don't where that switch and that change in philosophy
Well,
came out of
yes.
the government?
I mean, I've spent a lot of time sending links of the governor saying that on YouTube to people because they couldn't believe it when I told them that it happened and they didn't see it live. But essentially, what happened in the Senate testimony was, people getting up and basically, letting the Senate committee know that if you legalize adult use on December 7th, but you don't give anybody a place to legally buy it for up to 9 or 10 months, bad things are going to happen. I'm sure that the director of tourism in Michigan would love to have that happen. And then, then you have the illicit market, which would, I'm sure, be very happy with that situation as well. So we were, the people that went down there, including one of my clients, were able to get that message across. Apparently that message was conveyed to the governor, and it must have been a fairly compelling argument to the governor when he can, when we all know that, he's very concerned with consumer safety, child safety. Those are his top things. And of course, this impacts that greatly. So yeah, we were able to witness quite a 180 there on live television. So
Do you
I
anticipate that being brought up in the, brought over? I assume there's going to be some things that are in the Senate bill that as passed Senate bill, or I'm sorry, I call it Senate bill, it was actually House Bill 86 that was
yeah,
passed
I mean,
by the Senate.
House,
Some of that you
yeah,
think is going to be bleeding over into the House this week, and kind of what parts
yeah.
do you
So
think the 90-day rule bill?
so I don't, you start with what House Speaker Stevens said, and Representative Callender and other representatives have said, look, we want to respect the will of the voters. We're not here to do any major surgery on the bill. The two things that were going to go into effect immediately on December 7th, and they did, that I think caused the greatest concern because of the fact that they were going to go into effect so quickly, were the possession provisions and the home grow provision. But as we saw at the end of the Senate's surgical procedure, that they conceded the possession provisions as written in issue 2, and they mostly conceded the home grow, but they did tweak it from 6 per person and 12 per household to just 6 per household. So you got to understand the politics of this, or that the House wants to send something over there that's going to quickly get signed, and then the governor's happy. And I predict that so they're not going to. I predict they will change the home grow to 6 per person. They'll leave the possession provisions as is. I think they're going to include what the governor's asked for, which is early rollout. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't include the expungement provision since it came from the Senate. And if I had to make a guess, I'd say they probably will go with what the Senate wants, which is a 15% tax rate as opposed to 10% in there. And they might throw them a couple other things that they want in order to try to get it signed quickly on the governor's desk.
And that'll all be the subject of the hearings that we're talking about for Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah, I think
what gets brought over from the Senate's plan and added to or stricken out from 3780.
The two that I'm not really able to make a guess on, really, that I think are maybe the hot, what are moving up the list in terms of the hot button issues now, would be the licensing provisions. Well, first of all, the Senate just cut out all the licensing provisions, including the social equity, jobs and equity program and the level 3 stuff. They cut it all out. Okay. I don't believe that the House will go for that. I think again, they want to respect the will of the voters. That those were key provisions in issue 2. So I think they're going to stay. Those will get put back in, I believe. Now, will they change them in some? They could. I mean, they could mess with the numbers, I guess, in terms of who gets what and how many. But the bottom line is, and I'll be honest, I mean, I do represent people that have licenses, so just full disclosure. But we 130 dispensaries is not a whole bunch. Access is important, and as the people told the Senate committee, access and taxes are your two biggest tools for fighting the illicit market, and you already have low access, so you really can't. You don't have a lot of room to play with on the tax part, right? And yes, this is giving the existing licensees more licenses, but I have not yet seen anyone propose a plan to get us to more dispensaries quickly. So until someone does, I have to say that to me, that's a pretty important thing. And if they want to cut the number down and limit it a little bit, that's fine. I don't think you'll get a lot of pushback from the industry. But we do need them sooner than later. And that's the same reason that got the governor to do his 180 on the rollout, really. So the other big issue then would be the changes to the hemp, the hemp bill 928. Those are not an issue 2. I was told this week that that's probably the only part of the Senate Bill 86 that the government that the legislature has been working on for months. I think the rest of it was all kind of thrown together in the last month. But this is something apparently the governor has set up a task force about, and I believe that this language came from that task force. They clearly were looking for a bill to put this language in. It may not end up being put in this bill. I'm my personal opinion is it needs more discussion and debate, and they will be able to find another bill to put it in after it's been given proper discussion and debate. So I'm not a big fan of necessarily rushing it into this bill, but it is something that the governor is very concerned about, and so I'm sure there'll be some pressure to have it in this bill, and I'm sure we'll see a lot of testimony about that over the next 2 days.
And just for people that are listening, either now or later, the hemp language that Greg's talking about was added by the Senate in their version of their sub bill that would basically, I think, close the loophole for synthetic hemp products, intoxicated. It's really there to address intoxicating hemp products, such as the Delta 8s and some of those products that we see in the news. But as a hemp grower, I read the language, and some of my fellow hemp processor people that are already subject to Chapter 928 of the revised code under the hemp program, it goes beyond that. It goes the language that was proposed by the Senate and apparently from this task force really eliminates, in our view, almost all full spectrum CBD products from the over-the-counter market from the hemp program, and would force those products to be made by licensed THC processors, and would consider those, those 0.3% hemp products would under that language be categorized as marijuana. Is that how you read the language? And
yeah, I mean it's pretty complex. For starters, I was told that it was designed, or at least modeled after the hemp laws in Colorado. So if at least we know where the genesis of it it was. But it basically sets up a definition for something called a hemp cannabinoid product, and then it proceeds to define that in ways that I think, as Kelly just pointed out, are going to be problematic for the for hemp processors and retailers. One of the things that I think one of the reasons they put it in here, frankly, is, we're setting up this tax program now on the adult use side. And if you think about it, if you're not selling hemp legally, then you're selling marijuana or cannabis, right? I mean, it's one or the other, or it's nothing. And so I think what they're trying to do is say, look, if you're not selling hemp and you're illegally selling cannabis, then you should be paying those taxes too. And what it ends up doing is giving them sort of a new way to police this. One of the problems is we don't really have a police force or anybody charged with administering the retail sale of hemp. Our hemp bill does not really regulate retail sales at all. That's part of the problem here. And they're taking a massive step, but maybe it's too big a one because I don't know that they've really thought this through. And I don't believe that the hemp industry, at least it doesn't appear to me, had enough seats at the table here. So now's the time to speak up. But I do think that the governor's intentions, and I'm sure the task force intentions are solid in terms of consumer safety and trying to make sure that. So the real big problem is people don't really understand the difference right now, and frankly, that's. I won't point fingers, but it's some of it has to fall on the government in terms of education, and when you're not allowing the licensed industry to market or advertise, and you're putting all kinds of clamps on them, you can't expect them to do it. You're not even allowed to put a marijuana leaf on any kind of advertising or anything. So how are we supposed to educate people? So that's the big problem, right? And so. Like I said, I think it needs more work. I encourage everybody who is concerned about that to go look at the most recent version of the House HB 86 sub bill, which was sent to the House on Wednesday of last week. And when you go through it, you'll notice that the code sections are all in a numerical order. So you're going to go through it. Toward the front of the document, you'll find 92801, and that's where that language starts. That's where you're going to want to focus on that. It's before you get to the 3796 language, in sequence. So
Actually, I think it's on page 11, if I remember right. Those who want to really dive into that, but
yeah, you haven't memorized it. I don't yet, but that's good. That's good. Yeah, right there.
yes. So, interesting that you use the word new ways to police, and I just by moving that full spectrum hemp product from the Department of Agriculture over to the marijuana program, I guess that would be one way to to refer to it. But
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ideas I think that the industry could have and would have if they'd had enough opportunity. But sneaking this thing into a Senate bill without anybody knowing it was coming. I mean, honestly, the only reason I know about the task force is from talking to some people in the government. They just haven't made it. That wasn't really a publicly known thing, and now all of a sudden, this bill gets snuck into a House bill and made into a Senate sub bill. Nobody even knew it was in there for 3 or 4 days after it was released. So it's not a very transparent and way to do it, and it's also a dangerous way to do it if you're not going to get the stakeholders at the table to weigh in and explain some of the consequences of it.
yeah. I won't share probably my personal opinions on how it was done. I mean, if there's language that has been contemplated for months on this topic, and it just drops in and overnight in a midnight process without any discussion or input from the stakeholders. It's like, what's the point of having kind of these committee hearings? But we get our chance this week. So I guess those people who are interested in that particular language, again, that language is not in House Bill 354. It is currently not in that House bill. whether
Correct.
some people may be pushing to pull that over this week, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, it looks like we have a question. Are you okay to take a question at this
Sure.
point? All right,
Mhm.
I'm gonna unmute Sarah, or Sarah, if you want to unmute yourself. Welcome.
Hi, you guys. I'm trying. I'm sorry. Bear with me. Okay, I'm gonna keep my video off because I'm having trouble. So, hi, Kelly and Aaron know me. The rest of you don't. I am Sarah. I live in Akron, Ohio, and I own a sales and marketing agency that specifically works with cannabis brands. And the reason I raised my hand is because I work with two locally owned companies in Cleveland, Ohio, that make a hemp product that currently falls under the hemp bill. And we have been selling it in retail stores throughout Northeast Ohio. And I've been following all of this to make sure that we are still okay as of this moment in time to keep selling. What do you foresee happening? And I know this is an issue that changes literally by the minute and day to day. Just wanted to kind of throw that out there to see what kind of things I need to be telling people. And I'm also involved in the National Hemp Beverage Alliance Association. So I am working to stay up and up on all these laws. And I just wanted to throw all that out there. In case you
Sure.
have anything to add or any guidance that you can provide, I would greatly appreciate it.
Sure. Well, just to answer your direct question first, because it's important. As it stands right now, the changes that they're proposing to 928 are not the law. So, nothing has changed. Your ability to sell those products is the same as it was on December 6th.
Okay.
Now, if they do pass these changes to 928, and let's just say they happen to be included in 354, it is not expected that this will become emergency legislation. That takes a higher vote count in both chambers they probably don't have. So any changes that they make, whether it's to 3780 or whether it's to 928 or any other section of the code that they put in here, it will take 90 days for those changes to take effect.
Okay.
So that you will have, at least that long to know about it and to pivot if you have to.
Okay. And right now, am I correct in saying because the products are under the 0.3%, we still fall under the Farm Bill, which has been extended for another year?
The Farm Bill has been extended for another year. That's correct. So your legality under federal law is not expected to change until they address it again in the Farm Bill, which, as you just mentioned, they kicked down the road for another year. So,
Okay.
yeah, there's no real changes that are known, or expected in terms of the federal definition of hemp, or anything like that, between now and then. If anything changes, it would probably come in the way of some type of guidelines. But the law itself won't be changing, at least for that long.
Okay, thank you. And this might be a discussion for another time, so just stop me if it is. And maybe Kelly can help me with this later, but I'm trying to get information for bars and restaurants who are interested in opening up a new category for the hemp beverages and need stuff in writing from Columbus just to confirm that, nothing's going to happen to their alcohol license. I just need everything in writing that I can possibly get. So is just producing the language in the Farm Bill enough, or is there anything else that you know about or people I can talk to get, just some clarification and it helps them to understand the
Yeah, I've
laws?
just recently kind of taking an interest in the beverage stuff and paying attention to what's going on in Minnesota.
Yeah.
In particular, I was trying to read the changes in 928 to see if it might inadvertently, I guess, because I don't think they probably would do it on purpose, but if it would like inadvertently allow for beverages, I'm not sure that they're actually not allowed in Ohio right now. We don't have a per se ban on them, I wouldn't think, in our language. It's, basically what Ohio did when they set up their hemp program. You guys probably already know this, but they just took the USDA guidelines and adopted them. They didn't make any changes to them. There were 2 states that did that, and Ohio became one of the first 2 states to approve their hemp program because they just basically took the USDA's guidelines and said, here you go, this is our law. So we really have a bare bones skeleton hemp framework, infrastructure, whatever. The Department of Agriculture is only their administrative authority under the law is only to administer cultivation and processing. They really don't. Their position is we don't administer retail. Commerce is saying the same thing. Nobody thinks they have the authority to do anything about the retail stuff. So that's sort of why we need to have a retail law. But I don't think they're changing too much of the cultivation or processing laws in doing it. When I read it, it seemed like it was mostly addressing retail. So if the ability to make beverages existed on December 6th, you still have it, in my
Okay.
opinion. Yeah.
I've been selling them for about a year here.
Yeah, I
So,
know people have. And so, now if they
okay.
pass this, then some of the dosing and strength caps that they're putting in
Yeah.
there could, I haven't done the math yet, but it could impact it, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good question, Sarah, and
Yeah,
good place
that's
to
something
ask.
that that's something that's going to certainly deserve some follow-up. Happy to talk about that offline.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you, guys.
definitely. And kind of back to something else that Greg and Sarah both brought up about education and marketing. Is I see both the Senate bill and maybe even some in the House bill, they're very strict on the advertising and marketing to what can be said and done by cultivators and processors and brands, but yet that we're so lacking in education that there's really, we need to fill that gap, like you said, so people understand what is the difference between an intoxicating level of CBD or an intoxicating level of THC, and for safety reasons and dosing reasons and responsible use. So does the in your mind have the committees or any of the representatives or senators been thinking about how do we educate the public, and with these heavy restrictions on what can be said and done by the actual people who make it? You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, one of the things that's been happening behind the scenes here that not a lot of people know is that, when the budget bill was passed in July, the state decided that it was time for the Board of Pharmacy to be shown the door in terms of their role in administering our medical program. Because I'll say medical because, back in July, we didn't know if the bill would pass yet. But what that did was it kind of gave us a little bit of a head start in getting commerce to actually run the retail side of our medical program. Because up until this time, they had no involvement in that, really. They just did cultivation, processing, and testing. So that's a big step. Most of the industry is embracing that. I believe pharmacy probably saw what was heading down the tracks and decided we don't want to have anything to do with these dispensaries if they're going to be selling adult use. So, help us get out. And, everybody was happy to show them the door. So January 1st is when Commerce takes over administration of retail. As part of that, they were already supposed to set up the Division of Cannabis Control and, a lot of these things. So a lot of these things are sort of been in the works for 6 months, at least the infrastructure parts, solving the IT problems and all this kind of stuff, disassociating ores from all this, there's a lot more to it than people think, but I do sympathize with Commerce. They have a lot to do, and maybe even more now, sooner. But in that process, the Ohio Medical Cannabis Industry Association, of which my law firm is a member, so I've been able to attend those meetings and so forth. Over the last several months, they've been communicating with Commerce about things that they wish, or their wish lists on things that Commerce would change when it comes time for them to take over retail. Some of those things can be changed quickly, but things that are in the rules have to go through a process called JCAR, a joint commission on rule changes that takes it can take 7 to 9 months. So they're going to make some rule proposal changes in the beginning of the year. There's other things they can change immediately that would be more considered policy or guidelines that pharmacy was using. Unfortunately, and some of the advertising and marketing restrictions you're talking about are guidelines that can be changed quickly, and some are actually part of the rules, and they'll need some more time to change. But we have some very onerous restrictions, and like we talked earlier, they do hinder the industry's ability to do education. So the good news is that this wish list was divided into 3 buckets. One of them was just advertising and marketing, and it had a lot of things on there that they hope that they'll change immediately. Some were operational, and the very first bucket they submitted were patient-focused changes, such as reducing the cost of medical cards to 0, and things like that. So I do believe that we're going to see some significant changes made to retail, in particular when commerce takes over, and hopefully some will be advertising and marketing related. But you got to keep in mind that some of the things that we really want to change are going to take up to a year or 9 months to change, just because they have to go through that rule change process.
Okay, so we have some things that are in place today, some that might be changed in 90 days from the date when they pass the bill, and then other things will come as a part of the rulemaking process, which could take up until next year.
Yeah, just to give you an example of some of the really bad, I mean, we're talking about education here, right? You would think that it would be, these businesses would be able to show up at a local community event and have a booth and just pass out informational material. But if there's food or beverage being served at that event, the licensed operator is not allowed to be there with a booth. Things like that are just really onerous. If you were to have a grand opening, can't have a food truck on your lot, just things that don't make any sense, and have really kept our medical program sort of hidden, and now it's really, you wish now that we have to do all this educating fast, you wish that really wasn't the case and that we were starting from a better place, but we're not. So we have to figure it out, and hopefully commerce does seem very receptive to a lot of these things. I'll just say, we'll see what happens, but they have been a lot easier to talk to about this stuff than pharmacy was.
Well, we have another question in the chat, and you touched on it earlier as maybe being something that they're still going to be talking a lot about this week, and that is the tax revenue. The question was, with the Finance Committee meeting tomorrow and Wednesday, do you see change in the appropriation of tax revenue and the tax rate potential? So where we're starting from, the framework is what was in issue 2, voted by the public, and it had, the 30% that went to some social equity and social economic issue areas. And then we've seen proposals by both, a couple proposals out of the House that would shift that money, and then also from the Senate that would shift that money to training and law enforcement. So where do you see those discussions being most involved this week?
Well, I don't think it's going to get changed as much as the Senate proposed. We start again with 3780 as the law, so how it was carved up in there is the current law. But I guess to answer your question, I do expect some changes, and frankly, the reason is because when I referred earlier to some of the comments being made by various members of the legislature and the governor and so forth, one of those people making that comment was House Speaker Stevens, who indicated that he would like to see some of the money go to incarceration and prisons. So I'm like, wow, that's a 180. So unfortunately, when it comes to money and where the tax money is going to go, this is when you get, I don't care if the legislator just doesn't even care about this bill, they're going to care about where the tax money is going, and they're going to obviously want to, have their hands in it. So I guess I would love to say that I don't expect any changes there, but I do. But I just I think they'll keep the same categories that that the bill has, and then they'll probably shrink some of those percentages and maybe squeeze in a couple more categories that they want to direct some of the money to. I hope some of it does go to education though, and if they're that they don't change any of that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen, proposals from like 45% going to the general fund to 30%
Oh,
going to law enforcement, building jails. So there's, a lot of interest in the money for sure. More so.
One thing Representative Callender said last week in front of a group of industry people was that he was not in favor of that much of it, of any of it going to the general fund. So I don't think that he's the sponsor of the bill. So, I believe that he's going to make sure that it doesn't get too fat in that bucket.
So I put that one up there as a wait and see, right? We'll see what happens this week.
It's a good question though, and that's something that I do think they're going to be playing around with a little. Certainly won't. I don't think it's going to look like the Senate version. It'll look more like what's in the bill, but there's probably going to be some changes.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Was we have anyone else? I will go ahead and maybe try to unmute and see if anybody else has any questions or want to jump in if you have a question here. We're about 12 minutes, 11 minutes till the hour. So take a few more questions, or if there's anything else you want to add, Greg, that you think people need to know before end of the week.
Well, as far as what else to know, I mean, I think we've covered most of it. There's, we're not all the way to the finish line yet. But I think because again, every day that goes on, it makes it harder to claw back what was just enacted and went into effect. And that includes the home grow, that includes the possession charges, and there's certain parts of this that you just can't, certain parts of this toothpaste isn't going back in the tube, as I like to say, and so this tax stuff is definitely interesting. And I've always thought, until there's tax revenue, we got time to argue over where it's going. I was never in favor of making any really quick changes to things that in this bill that we have time to properly debate and discuss. I get it. There's some parts that we don't have time to focus on now, but that need to be addressed. But a lot of this other stuff, there's plenty of time. Now, maybe if we're going to do advanced roll-up, they need to figure out the tax stuff sooner than later. So they're certainly counting on that tax money coming in early. I can tell you that.
I think so. So I got a question. Lisa raised her hand, and then Lori, I'm not sure if you had a question as well, but let's start with Lisa.
Hi guys, thank you so much, Kelly, Aaron, Greg, for having this meeting, and just kind of, I saw it on social media and wanted to hop on. My name is Lisa. I work with Bloom Medicinals. I'm the outreach marketing manager. So obviously in my position, I'm just like, when can I start working with other people and doing more with marketing and advertising and go out in the community and actually do things with other organizations that we've never been allowed to do before. So, it's so funny because it's like I have so many questions. I'm trying to just dial it down to like one. I'm sure we all do though. So thanks for letting me ask this question. I was just curious. It seems to be going city by city of what different cities and counties are going to allow when it comes to recreational cannabis. I've already started seeing some places selling things, and I'm just like, hold the phone. Is this something that they're just going rogue and just doing these things? Or are there actual cities and counties that have allowed permissions of non-dispensaries to start selling actual THC products? Because I have started to see things, and I'm wondering, I'm over here Googling and searching things to see if I missed something, but I'm wondering how do you guys think that's going to go when it comes to each part of Ohio and what they're going to allow?
You're correct that communities are already starting to extend their moratoriums. The communities that had banned or had a moratorium on retail sales, for instance, are extending those now. Mainly, I think just to see what happens. There is a lot of uncertainty, as we know, but also to make sure that they have enough time to go through their proper channels when it comes to getting community feedback and so forth. If they're going to allow adult use, I think we're going to see some communities that are okay with medical, but are not okay with adult use. It's gonna make it interesting when it comes time to find sites for future dispensaries and so forth. But if you're seeing someplace selling product right now, that's clearly not legal. No one is allowed to sell legally right now, and the earliest that will happen if they change the bill, it could happen in March or April, as the governor would like to see. But if that doesn't get included in the bill, or it doesn't get passed, then we're not seeing adult use sales until September, probably at the earliest. So anybody that's selling it right now is not legal. If they're a licensed medical dispensary, they're in violation. What I have seen, because people have been sending me links and so forth, are some well, there's one in particular, I won't name it, but it came up like the day after the bill passed, and if you went to their website, you'd think that you could order adult use marijuana online. They're not calling it hemp derived. They don't mention hemp anywhere on their website. They mention THC, and that their flower has like between 19 and 24% THC in it. This is the kind of thing that I think the governor was made aware of, and he understands that if we don't do something, we're going to see a lot more of these pop-up type situations, the way New York is seeing it, the way California is seeing it, where if you give people the ability to possess marijuana, but you don't give them a way to purchase it legally, they're going to find it somewhere, and there are going to be people that take advantage of that illegally, and they're doing it already, apparently.
Yeah, I was really blown away. Just an example, I had a friend of mine, she went on an anniversary trip to a nice hotel in Ohio, and they were selling actual THC drinks at the hotel, and she took a picture of it, posted it on Facebook, and she actually doesn't live in Ohio. So she was visiting her family. So her post was like, when in Ohio, when in Rome, do as the Ohioans do. It's legal. And then she posts a picture of her can, and it was an actual like live resin, 20 milligrams THC, help you sleep. So the hotel, they told them, yes, you can buy this here, drink this here. She has it all on Facebook, but they said you can't leave with it. So they said, if you come here and do this, you have to finish the drink before you leave. So I was like reading this Facebook post, like, oh my gosh, did I miss something? So thank you for clearing that up for me.
Now that, I don't think that's legal. I did hear of a bar or grill, bar, restaurant, whatever, in downtown Columbus area that is now advertising a happy hour for this Friday, where they're going to allow consumption on the patio. That I think,
yeah, we've seen a lot of that too.
Yeah, that I think is legal, at least to host it. Now, where the people are buying their legal marijuana from is a different question. So I'm not sure how much I would be advertising that, but what I'm saying is, yeah, you're going to see a lot of collisions like this of people kind of deciding, well, this goes to the old easier to ask for forgiveness than permission kind of thing. And so I do think you're going to see some people trying to take advantage of not only the confusion, but the complexity of it all.
Yeah, I've got two more questions popped up in the chat here. The first one is in regards to the testimonies at the State House this week. Do you know the times and the location, the rooms that they're going to be in? Is it the House Finance Committee?
It is. And the last I checked on their website, they didn't have the times yet, but I'm going to refresh that here and see if I have the times.
I thought I had seen some at 10 a.m., but then while you're looking for that.
Yeah, if you go on the, I'll post another link. If you go on this link, apparently I was told that if you, there's a box up in the corner that says interested in HB 354, track it. You click on that and you will be getting updates, I guess, emailed of the status of the bill. And it's supposed to include, I was told, instructions on how you can register to testify. And then as it moves through committee, you'll get updates.
Awesome. Awesome. And then, with our last 2 minutes here, another question in the chat came up about the criminality issues. I think it was Senate House Bill 86, but the Senate put in, oh man, a bunch of basically recriminalizing certain possession and outdoor public use. And then specifically cited here was a mandatory 3-day jail term if you're caught in your vehicle. Consuming in the vehicle. Do you have any insight on whether is that something that you anticipate being discussed more this week, or do you think again that was just the Senate being overly enforcing?
I do know that there were people testifying down at the Senate about the fact that there were various parts of what they were doing with those criminality concerns. I think they were putting them in 3796.99, again, going back to what they were trying to do. That would have been 3796.99 of the Senate sub bill. Again, those aren't part of our law right now.
Right.
I guess all I can say is I do know that, one of the governor's hot button topics is impaired driving. And so, I guess there will be some pressure to do something there. But as Senator Ruley pointed out at the Senate hearing, it's already illegal to do that. They were just really trying to beef it up. And again, I go back to what I said about trying to sneak these changes through real fast. This might be something we want to address sooner than later, but I don't think it needs to be done in a week. And we don't have anybody really even, most people were concerned with how we're going to run the program. And this is something that really is more of a state policy issue, not just a marijuana policy issue, in my opinion, and it needs to be thoroughly vetted. Again, I think the House will certainly consider it, but I don't think they're going to mess with it right now. That would be my guess.
Awesome. Well, we're running up here on 1 o'clock Eastern time where we are today, and so close thanking.
You have one other question there that I'll answer for Lori. I want to emphasize any citizen of the state of Ohio can sign up and testify at these hearings. It's not content specific. If you have something to say, you can sign up and say it. You'll get about 3 or 5 minutes. So, make sure you've got your comments tight and concise. And one other tip, I always tell people, if you go down there, if you get 5 minutes, be done in 4. Give yourself time for them to ask. They love to ask questions, and they're going to have a lot of people down there, so they're going to try to squeeze as many people as possible. But try to have room for questions, and other than that, have at it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, and we will keep you posted. Either if we need to have another live session, we will. Maybe on our blog, put some posting up after we see what happens this week, and then tune in for our part 2 and 3 of the series, where we'll be looking at some educational issues and the social equity issue. And Aaron, did you have anything you want to close with? And Greg too, I'll let you if there's anything else you want to leave as final words. I
would just like to thank you for having me. I really do enjoy talking about this a lot, helping people work through it. I do practice at the law firm in McMurray and Schuster in New Albany. I have a consulting business as well that you mentioned. I'm available. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. So if you're on LinkedIn, look me up and reach out anytime if you have a question.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys all for joining. Part 2 of this Seeing Green in Ohio webinar series is scheduled for a week from today. So 12/18 on that Monday at same time, 12 p.m. So we'll be posting about that and probably send some information to sign up if you guys are interested in joining that one as well. But thank you guys so much and keep using your voices.
Great day. Thank you.